Hi everyone, welcome to podcast. We'll determine the name later. um, my name is Lakan, and I'm here with my friend Jeff. Say hi, Jeff.
Hey there.
And so this is going to be our gaming, movie, kind of media podcast, I guess. Whatever we happen to be passionate about, and we'll just talk about it and spew our passions at each other for an hour or so. I'm Lakan. I play a lot of video games. I watch a lot of movies, watch a lot of anime. I'm a big nerd. I've been playing video games since I was 3. Basically, as soon as I could hold a Nintendo controller, I was able to start. I started playing. My parents had one, basically, since we were kids. We always had something in the house. And even in the Philippines, my dad actually kept an old Atari console in the Philippines. Straight up had it attached to a projector. So we were playing back in my grandparents' house back in the day.
Oh yeah, I didn't. I started with NES, so that's way beyond me.
Yeah, I'm a musician, music teacher. So I also really enjoy listening to soundtracks, movie soundtracks, video game soundtracks. That's kind of like that's also another thing that kind of really pulls me into a lot of the medias that I look into. Perfect example: the new Kirby game came out recently, and hearing new versions of the older themes being remade in like a modern sensitivity and newer orchestration, I just get super stoked about it.
Yeah, I think music definitely ties into a lot of not just the nostalgia, but a lot of the feelings that you have when you're playing something new. And I definitely think that that's something that we'll touch on in the future. But let me get my shit in because you got to introduce yourself.
Yeah, of course, go ahead.
So I'm Jeff. I do this media stuff for a living. I've been doing this professionally for about 7 years, content creation of all forms and matters. But I also enjoy video games. I've been playing since I was about 2-3 years old. I started with the NES, moved into the Super Nintendo, and so on and so forth. Until now, where now I'm, PC Master Race. And it's been a blast. We have quite a bit of range as far as games are concerned. Lakan, can you hear the sync right now?
No, I do not.
Okay. You can cut it out or leave it in. I don't care.
We're leaving that in.
Leave it in. All right.
I'm going to hear your cat knocking things over in the background, too. Just like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, leave it in. It's funnier that way.
Exactly. Real.
Yeah, but I think what's going to make this a lot of fun is you and I, because obviously we've known each other for a very long time.
Yeah.
And we'll probably touch on that as we go here. But we also play so many different genres of games that I think this is going to be a lot of fun, and not just games, but movies and anime and TV shows or whatever. We consume so many different genres, and I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
We're definitely in a couple different rabbit holes, and I would like to not particularly drag you down those rabbit holes, but I would at least like to have you see into the chasm that is our individual nerdisms.
I think in certain places, you're going to see me down there as you're working your way into the rabbit hole. So that's also going to be a lot of fun.
I'm excited to see what you have for me down the line as well, too.
Oh, you're gonna like what I got for you. I promise.
It's awesome. Essentially, what we're going to be doing here is each episode, one of us is going to come to the table with a piece of media, whether it be gaming, a movie, a TV series, a general one of us happens to really enjoy, and the other might not even know anything about it. So I'll pitch something, Jeff will hop into it, both feet just jump into the deep end and see what he see if he finds any enjoyment out of it, see what he finds interesting about it or what he hates about it, and then we're going to reconvene in 2 weeks or so after the other person has given it a try. Doesn't have to be don't have to like it, but they have to at least see what it's about, and then we'll discuss our experience on the other end, and hopefully the second person will have a bit of a better understanding of what it is the first person pitched to them, whether it be something that they find really interesting, a game they really enjoy, a movie they really like, whatever. And then after that, the next person will pitch something to me.
So I will pitch something to you.
Yes, and we may have...
Unless you're already replacing me.
I'm thinking about it already.
It's because I made you drive the first episode, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm also scared of the rabbit holes you're going to drag me down.
Uh-huh.
But at least you're also in the rabbit hole, so I'm glad I'll have a friend down there. For this first episode, thing I would like to pitch to Jeff here, or show him, is a little game called Slay the Spire. Jeff, have you ever heard of this game?
I have heard of this game. I had a coworker of mine who was also a big gamer, who was really into it a few years ago. Okay. And so I have a basic idea of what it is, but I have not seen it. The only things I know about it are the basic concept and the splash art that I'm looking at as I install this game to my hard drive.
You've seen it, you know somebody else who has played it. I'm actually surprised, because I really don't hear a lot of people who know about this game, even though it's a really, really, in my opinion, a fantastic game. Before I even get into the game, do you play any sort of card games at the moment? Like deck building games?
Oh, Lakan, do I play card games? I play lots and lots of Yu-Gi-Oh! Either Master Duel, which just released a few months ago, and Duel Links, which I've been playing since 2020. So I have had my fix of card games over the past couple of years.
So I play card games as well. I play Magic the Gathering. I played a little bit of Pokemon with you guys when you guys dragged me to that rabbit hole for a little bit. That was fun. And I've not played Yu-Gi-Oh! Since, I want to say, 2007 or 8, when a friend of mine made me a deck just to kind of mess around with them for a bit. So when I played with them, there was actually a bunch of new stuff that I hadn't seen before, like XYZs and tabletop fusion summons without the requirement of like polymerization and stuff.
Those are XYZ summons and contact fusion.
That thing. So
we'll get into that.
The feeling that I got during that is, oh, I get to play my cards now. Cool. And then the other person plays way more cards than me, gets more monsters out into the field, and then I feel powerless. So in a way I can transfer that to Slay the Spire. Slay the Spire is you being the person who is trying to break the game on your end. Slay the Spire is a roguelike deck building game made by American studio Megacrit. It was in early access for a while. It started in 2017 and then officially came out in 2019. I've been following the development of this game for a little bit. One of those things I was like, I'm kind of interested in it, kind of not. I didn't get into the early access for it, but then I watched a bunch of content on it over the last couple of years, even more so during the lockdowns, where I just spent every day on YouTube and fell down the rabbit hole of this game. So like 2020, I watched a lot of this game, even during development. Sure, let's just go ahead and buy it and then start playing it. Immediately sucked in. This game is fantastic. The gameplay is really fun. The gameplay, it's turn-based like any other card game, right? But instead of playing with against another person, you're playing against the computer. You have 3 energy to play your cards. Playing particular cards costs a different amount of energy. Attacks, skills like defending, drawing more cards, throwing away cards from your hand. Attacks, which are attacks, you hit the enemy. Skills like defending, drawing, discarding, other effects in the turn. And powers, which last for the entirety of that particular engagement, which gives you buffs or debuffs the enemy or creates deck effects. And we can go into that a little bit more probably in the second half when you've actually played the game and see how the powers affect how your deck plays. At the end of your turn, typically discard your hand. There are ways to retain certain cards into your hand or not discard at all unless you use a card to discard stuff. During your turn, enemies will display their upcoming move, what they will be doing, if they're going to be attacking you, how much damage it does, or if they buff themselves or debuff you, or if they're summoning something for like another monster for you to fight.
That is super interesting. I have to tell you, as somebody that obviously has played competitive card games here for a little while, to have to discard your entire hand at the end of every turn is certainly an interesting caveat to how these games will play, right?
Yeah.
Because, in most cases, especially in Yu-Gi-Oh!, especially in the very combo-centric way that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is these days, you're generally playing all of your cards anyway, but just to have that option to keep something for next turn or keep one of your hand traps with you, you don't have that option, it sounds like, in Slay the Spire. So that's inherently interesting. Are there graveyard effects or discard pile effects in this game?
Kind of. One of the base mechanics in the game you'll experience right off the bat with the Ironclad, I guess if you start with the Ironclad, is a thing called Exhaust. So essentially those are like one turn use for cards that if you don't use them, they will go away. Like there's a thing called Ethereal. So if you don't play the card in your hand, it'll essentially exile itself at the end of your turn. There are ways to pull cards back from exile or exhaust to make them playable again.
Okay.
But it still retains that, like, oh, if I don't play this, or if I play this again, it'll go back to exile. There are technically ways to do that, but most cards, for the most part, when they discard, they kind of just go in. There are some cards where, like, it'll say, if this card is discarded from your hand, gain 2 energy, or draw 2 cards.
Okay.
And, you know, you can create these decks that are focused on discarding, where, like, you give yourself an engine, essentially. Remember how I said before, this game's about kind of breaking the deck against the enemy? Okay. You can create an engine by discarding cards, by exhausting cards, by playing 3 attacks in a turn, or by playing 5 skills in a turn to deal damage to an enemy, or buffing yourself or debuffing the enemy to do damage to them as well.
That is exciting, because one of my Master Duel decks is Thunder Dragons, which, if anybody listening knows Thunder Dragons, the main goal of Thunder Dragons is to get them into the graveyard and then banish them, or exile if you're using Magic terminologies, because they have not only graveyard effects, but banishment effects as well. So that's super interesting. That sounds like fun.
The discarding your hand at the end of turn mechanic is something found in a lot of physical deck building games. Like, I don't know if you ever heard of Dominion, or no. There was a Marvel game, I believe, as well. It was kind of like similar to Dominion, where you use tokens to buy new cards to add to your deck. You draw 5, you play whatever you can, and then you discard your hand at the end of turn. You draw a new 5. So this is kind of similar to a lot of those like physical deck building games.
No, I haven't played any of the physical games, so this will be fun.
Yeah. So it's a really cool idea, and it kind of, as you said before, in traditional, you know, PvP card games, you retain your hand, right? You don't throw away cards at the end of your turn. You're usually prepping something for a big turn down the line, usually, right? There is a way to retain cards in this game, just at the cost of a relic or something that kind of like changes the way your run plays out. You'll see it when you get into the game, or cards that say retain at the end of turn or whatever, something like that. Back into the game a little bit, there are ways for the enemy as well. As I said before, they show you how much they're going to hit you for, how many times they're going to attack you, if they're going to buff themselves or debuff you, right? There are also ways for them to add garbage cards to your hand or your deck. The term they use for that is like status or curse cards. And basically when you draw them, usually either they're junk in your hand. It's kind of like playing like Tetris Attack or something, or like Pokemon Puzzle League, where like a garbage block gets dumped on you.
Right.
So it just makes your turn a little bit more inconvenient to play. And then if you let certain encounters last too long, they can basically ruin the run, because now there's too many things for you to deal with, and you can't deal with them fast enough, and you can't kill the opponent fast enough before they slow your deck down to a grinding halt and kill you like little by little. When you win a fight, you receive gold, and you can add a card to your deck. And occasionally you can receive a one-time potion and a relic, which can give you a permanent buff to your character for the duration of the run, like increasing your base health, additional energy during your turns, lower casting costs, automatic blocking, other effects like that. Oh, I guess that's one thing I never mentioned before. You have a set amount of health for every character. They're all a little bit different for your starting health, and you don't always heal before your next fight. There are ways to heal in the game, like resting at campfires, very very RPG right there. Or if you're playing the Ironclad, he has a relic which allows him to regain 6 health at the end of his fights. It all makes sense in terms of like what the character is about. They do different abilities and skills, and they have different play styles basically. Quick dive into here for the three starting classes, I guess. So there's the first character is called the Ironclad. He's the what I like to call the Unga Bunga class. He's like he's the beat stick class. He focuses mostly on attacking and buffing themselves with a splash of the exhaust mechanic. Remember how I said before, there was a way to essentially exile your cards or banish your cards at the end of your turn. Basically, you don't want your deck to get too big, kind of same to like how you have a traditional deck building game, right? Where if your deck is too big, it's hard for you to pull what you need.
Correct.
So the Ironclad is relatively basic, but has a little bit of like the next basic level of deck building. The next class is the Silent. It's a class focused on skills, cycling their cards in and out, drawing more, discarding cards, and they also have a thing called the Poison mechanic, and they're the only ones who have it. And Poison does a lot of damage. It just takes a little bit longer to get going. It's more of like a late game kind of scaling thing, versus the Ironclad being like upfront damage. I'm gonna beat you down, basically. The next class is the Defect, which is the power focus class. Remember I said before there's 3 different cards, right? Attack, skills, and powers. The Defect focuses a lot on power cards, which, you know, increase your ability. It has essentially an orb slot, or 3 technically, and you start with 1 orb that deals damage at the end of your turn. And there are ways to get more orbs. You cycle more orbs. You can also attack and defend like usual, and then use more powers to make your orbs, you know, activate twice at the beginning of your turn and then once at the end of your turn. And then, you know, every time you play a power card, you draw another power card, stuff like that. And basically it's like you're kind of buffing yourselves. It has a bit of early damage, and then really scales if you can get lucky and get the right cards to build to, you know, to round your deck out. And there's a 4th character, which it's been a while now since I've gotten there, or since I was there, but it's locked initially, I believe, and it's called the Watcher. And I think you unlock that character by beating the game once with each character. Again, I could be wrong here. It's been a while since I've unlocked the Watcher.
Right.
Cool character. Hurts my brain because the character shifts between stances to gain energy and deal double damage whilst we're shifting to another stance or drawing cards. So basically it's like, imagine trying to move yourself from like attacking and defending, you know, shifting into like attack mode to defense mode. Think of it like that. And you get buffs in specifically which either mode you're in, and that's how the Defect plays. And it takes a little bit more thinking, and it hurts my brain when I think about it.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah. So out of the classes that I mentioned so far, is there one you've kind of like been interested right off the bat?
I'm gonna ask you, what do you think I want to play? Because I know what I want to play, but what do you think I want to play?
I want to say for you, see, this thing, it's been a while since we played anything against each other. At least any of our like traditional PvP card games.
Also, my style has changed.
Oh, you have changed
back in the day. So like, you might be thinking one way, but now my new mindset has me thinking something else.
Okay. I want to say, you mentioned before of putting your cards into your graveyard essentially, and then using those banish effects, right? I'm assuming something that requires a little bit of more planning, I would assume. Like a little bit is for like a bigger payoff later. So I would assume maybe the Silent, I would assume, is what you're that interested in.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct.
I am a genius.
You know, old younger Jeff would have picked the Ironclad because he would have just wanted to go unga bunga. But, you know, playing these card games now at the level that I've been playing them, I really enjoy the power that comes with drawing and discarding and having those effects that activate in places that aren't on the field. And so I think that ability, that draw power with the poison mechanic, makes the Silent the class that I'm going to be interested in starting with. I mean, it could always change, of course, but I think that's where I'm starting.
Yeah, the Silent's really cool. What I like about the Silent is that you can play a lot of cards in one turn, because the Silent can also create cards in their hand.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, the basic card for the Silent is a card called Blade Dance, and when you play it, it costs 1 mana. You get 3 shivs into your hand, 4 if the card is upgraded, and each one of those shivs costs 0 to play, but it exhausts at the end of your use. So, or once you use it, sorry. You can find a relic or something that says when you play X cards per turn, deal 3 damage to all enemies. So, you know, to do extra damage, or deal how many attacks to gain 1 strength or 1 dexterity to increase how much defense you gain from defending yourself. So it's really cool. The Silent has a lot of really cool mechanics, basically. And you can kind of create an engine either doing poison or attacking, just non-stop attacking, or doing like discard decks basically. I like all the classes. It just depends on, I guess, what my mind is currently thinking of, I guess, when I'm playing it at that time.
Right.
Like, I like the Ironclad, and then sometimes I'll just go on like a losing streak and get destroyed. Like, and then I'm not unga bunga that day. My brain's running too hard, and I want to play something that requires a little bit of thinking because that playstyle is just not working for me that day. But the game's really cool. You can kind of learn how to play all of them because the base mechanics of them are all the same, and then just what individual cards they get. So each one of those characters also has a different deck. So the Ironclad has cards specifically for them. The Silent has cards specifically for them. The Defect does, and so does the Watcher. There are basic cards which are all the same, like attacks and defense, but then the rest of the cards in that deck are completely different. And there are ways to pull other cards from other characters into your deck, but that's at the requirement of a relic, and it's not really a regular way you play the game.
So correct me if I'm wrong, it kind of sounds like the characters are their own archetypes. So there's no sort of archetype that you can build within the deck, but the characters are. So you can build a Silent archetype, an Ironclad archetype. You know what I mean by that? Like where the deck sort of revolves around a central mechanic and all of the cards are related to that central mechanic that they want to do in order to be successful.
Kind of. So the Ironclad, as I said before, has a way to exhaust cards, right? To get rid of cards.
Mm-hmm.
There's a way, or there are cards within the Ironclad where it says exhaust and gain 5 block for every card you exhaust. So there are ways to essentially empty your hand and gain 1,000,000 block basically in one turn. And there's also a card for the Ironclad called Barricade, which makes it so you don't lose defense at the end of your turn. So when you defend yourself, and it'll go up in like 6, 10, 12, whatever. Once the opponent hits you, and say I have 12 shield, and the opponent hits me for 10, I have 2 left over, right? I don't get to keep that unless I have a card in play called Barricade, which allows me to retain whatever defend I've gained those turns. Essentially, within the archetype of the character, the deck can play a multitude of different ways.
Got it. So yes, the characters are their own archetypes.
Essentially, yes. And it's cool because I think it's funny because the Silent has a little bit of flexibility in this manner because the Silent has ways to, even though the Silent doesn't hit as hard as the Ironclad, there are ways to hit multiple times and give yourself a permanent buff for the rest of that fight by continuously attacking, which is kind of cool because you can also make the Silent an unga bunga type character,
right,
but you can't make the Ironclad a cycling character like the Silent, basically.
Got it.
It's really cool. The cool thing about this game is that, like, have you ever played against another deck where I'll use a Magic the Gathering explanation here. White blue control, right? Where essentially they're just stopping you from playing any of your cards, and anything you have in the field gets removed.
In Yu-Gi-Oh, we have Eldritch, which is a graveyard and trap-based deck that sort of is that control. I also play Dinos, which is technically a form of control because its boss monster has a really crippling negate if you don't have either a way to stop it or if you're playing a fusion-based deck. So yeah, there are quite a few control decks in Yu-Gi-Oh still.
Okay. Have you ever played against one of those control decks and realized, wow, I hate it because I can't do anything, or it feels oppressive, right?
Every single time.
So
just about.
What's cool about this game is that because it's not a PvP game, it's a PvE game, right? You almost are incentivized to try to break the game by making an infinite deck, or abusing the mechanics of the character to get through all 3 acts. And that's essentially being on the receiving end of an oppressive deck is not fun. But the fact that you don't have anyone to oppress here, it's not that bad. It feels pretty good to actually fight an AI and realize, oh wait, I've gone infinite. I can just kill this person by playing these 3 cards over and over and over again in a specific order, and I just win this fight now because I got to this point.
Right. It is a lot of fun crushing dreams, but when there's no human on the other side of that interaction, it does add a bit of fun to it. You are right.
Whenever I'm on the receiving end of it, I feel bad. And honestly, even though I have like blue white control or a blue black mill deck, I feel bad using them. You know what I mean? But at least here in this sense, I don't feel bad doing so.
You should never feel bad for winning.
Yeah, and so so this game has been out for a little while now. Yeah, almost 3 years now at this point. It's cool because this game, because I've gotten down to the rabbit hole of this game, it has made me a little bit more like open to like other games that are similar to it. Like games like Castle Morihisa is like a deck roguelike game, very very similar to this, with Japanese like samurai theme around it instead of this like fantastical theme on it. Griftlands is like a future apocalypse cyberpunk kind of game. And another game that I really like, Dicey Dungeons, which is kind of this but with dice rolls instead. It's really really fun. And all of them are kind of possibly, but I'm pretty sure they're all inspired by this game called Dream Quest from like 2012, 2014. I could be wrong on that one, but it's essentially another roguelike deck building game. I'm pretty sure it's on Steam actually. It's rough to look at because everything looks like it was made in MS Paint. That's kind of like the grandfather of all of these games, these like deck building roguelike games.
Gotcha.
Are you interested so far, at least in my basic pitch for this game?
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I have other people telling me this game is great, so I mean, it obviously makes me interested, to say the least. Yeah, I'm excited. You know, it's a different take on sort of the same card games that I've been playing for the past couple of years, so I'm excited to see how it goes.
Are you looking to try anything in particular? I assumed you'd be interested in the defect, or in the silent. Is there anything you're like really interested into seeing in this game?
I want to see how busted everything gets, I think. But you know what? I think the most important thing, especially with roguelikes in general, is you find a loadout that works for you the first time. And then you can start to play around with sort of the other classes, right? I know one of the roguelikes that you and I both have played is Hades, and you know, I've played it all the way through a few times now. So, you know, I started off with the shield, and then I worked my way to the gun, and the bow, and the sword. You know, getting to that point was a lot of fun, but, you know, I had to get there first with the shield. So I'm excited to see which one of these classes is going to be my shield, basically.
You're like your default, basically. Your
right, which class. Is if I want to finish a playthrough, what am I picking? What's going to make me the most successful? You know, I think that's a lot of the fun of roguelikes, is when you can finally crack the code, so to speak.
Yeah.
And you can finally get
over
to
the first hurdle. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, it's a really cool game. I'm really excited for you to try it, and I'm hoping that you enjoy this game as much as I do. Hello, everyone, and we are back with, again, I don't know what the name of our show is, but it's been 2 weeks since our last recording session. Jeff has gotten his chance to actually play the game now, and we're going to go into a little bit on how his experience was. So, how have you been, Jeff? I haven't heard from you in a little while.
I think we're both going through the New Jersey allergy season about the same way, so that's how I've been, and I'm sure that's how you've been.
Yeah. It's been not... I've been feeling kind of meh the last couple of days because of it. You know, stuffy, congested. Hopefully it doesn't come through too much in the voice. Certain days I feel okay. Other days I feel absolutely wrecked, basically. And I'm trying my best to just not make people think I'm sick or whatever when I go to work. You know,
or that you have the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is what I was kind of dealing with myself in my head. But luckily enough, we're good. Knock on wood.
Yeah.
Like I'm knocking on my head here.
I'm pretty sure for the most part that I didn't have it. Actually, I was a little bit nervous about it because I did go to a convention last weekend. I went to PAX East, and that was really fun. I got to get a lot of hands-on time with a lot of video games out there. Super cool. A lot of cool games that haven't been released yet. A lot of demos. I was actually really enjoyed it.
Sure, I'll play one of them at some point here.
Yeah. I've tossed out a couple recommendations to our friends, and you know, you've seen me kind of, you know, going off like like an excited kid with a new toy. Like, oh my gosh, guys, this is so cool, guys! It was so fun, guys. All these devs I got to talk to and mess around with. It was actually a really really good time.
Yeah, no, well, it is. It's cool to be able to see things first before others, and that was sort of my big takeaway from Comic-Con when I went a few years ago, was getting able to play games before they were released, and that's always fun. Something I want to do more of.
Yeah, I highly recommend next year, or even like later this year if you have the time, try to hit up PAX West. I really recommend it. PAX East is apparently a little bit smaller than PAX West, but PAX East was really cool because it was in Boston. It was in the Boston Convention and Exhibition Hall or Center, whatever it's called.
Sure.
BCEC, I think it was. Yeah, it was really really cool. Big open floor, fully masked up and vaxxed up to be in there. But it was a cool event. Got to get a lot of hands-on time. It's like a fun energy. You know what I mean? And especially because I like video games, I think I was more excited for this than I was for other events in the last couple of years.
For sure.
But yeah, so that's been how things have been going for me on my end. How about you? And you do anything fun?
I went to Amish country, so it wasn't as fun as your trip, but I got to eat a lot, and that was great.
I hear Amish country is really nice. My parents actually went the weekend that I was in Boston, because I came back and I saw them with like a bunch of snacks that like were like all like labeled like Amish Joe's or whatever.
Oh yeah, yeah. The food is incredible. Just make sure you drive with your windows up.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Especially when we're out there in the open, you're gonna get weird scents we don't get out here in the city.
Lots of horse crap.
I noticed that as well when I was in Pennsylvania a couple of years ago, like in like middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, and it was just like, there's just like a heaviness in the air that I can't get away from.
Heavy crap smell.
Basically, yeah. But it's been a good couple weeks. Hoping that you had a good time playing the game, and we're gonna go a little bit into it. Actually, so then let's go straight in. What was your first impression of the game? So I gave you the pitch, I explained kind of the basics of it, and then I kind of just let you go freely into it, right? I didn't really,
and that was sort of what and that was sort of what I wanted to do, was jump in without any sort of idea of what I was doing. I've played roguelikes in the past of varying quality levels, I'd say, and from the jump, Slay the Spire definitely like confirmed to me, oh, there is a reason why this game has been heralded the way that it has been. This was probably the best roguelike until 2018. And I'll get into that a little more, even though, the game definitely came out. Obviously, it came out in early access the year before another certain game came out that I think sort of perfected. I don't want to say perfected, but it did a really great job on the roguelike genre, better than I think most roguelikes up until that point. But like I got it. I got it pretty much immediately when I started playing the game, that there's a reason why this game is so beloved and everybody keeps telling me about it. It's definitely a lot of fun. And I found myself getting really into it in a way that all but one roguelike hasn't had me feeling.
Which roguelike would that be?
Well, it's the big dog, Hades, which is the best to me. As a guy who has played a few roguelikes but hasn't played a lot of them, Hades is the game to me that sort of makes this whole roguelike genre not just approachable, but
accessible,
fun. Yeah,
fully accessible.
It makes it fun, and not because up until this point, the only roguelike I had played before those were like Risk of Rain, which doesn't really make you feel super powerful, which I guess is the point of the game. But
yeah, it's almost like a boss rush game, so you're supposed to feel kind of helpless a majority of the game when you play it.
Correct, and so that's what I appreciated about
Risk of Rain
Hades.
1 and 2, actually. Both of those games.
Which is why I appreciated not just this to a lesser extent, but Slay the Spire did a decent job with that whole, power up after you die and you come back to life. It did a good job with that, but I still think Hades did it better. And I hate to keep bringing it to that because it makes it seem like, oh, I didn't enjoy Slay the Spire because I did. And if I had played them in the reverse order, I would be sitting here waxing poetic about Slay the Spire. How wonderful this game is.
Any other roguelike. Yeah, exactly.
Correct. It just so happened that the roguelike that I played before this is the one I think did it the best. And there were two things that I sort of came up with as to my knocks on Slay the Spire,
Okay.
but otherwise, I thought it was a great time, and like I said, I get it. I understand why this game is so popular.
Yeah, we'll get into our like nitpicks or our criticisms, I guess, if we're gonna call it that. It's not so harsh to call it a criticism, I guess, because I don't really hate anything about Slay the Spire. But we'll get into it a little bit later on in the episode. So yeah, so let's do a little bit of breakdown for the people who maybe listen to us and haven't actually played the game themselves. Maybe they're curious about it, kind of like how I did my pitch to you, but a little bit more deep of an explanation. So let's see. When the game starts, you get typical opening screen. You say start run, and then you pick a character. Right. This again, it's been a little while since I've had the base screen unlocked for me because obviously I've been playing it a lot and I have all the characters unlocked.
Right.
And I have Ascensions unlocked because I've beaten the game with a couple characters. But when the game first opened, was it 3 characters? It was just 3, right?
So when the game opens, you only have access to the Ironclad, and as you play through, you unlock the Silent and then the Defect.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So you only have the Ironclad as your first starting character. Reason why? Because it is the most, I don't want to say basic, but it has the least amount of mechanics to really worry about early on.
And it rules ass.
Yeah, the Ironclad.
It rules ass. It's the best class.
Ironclad's a fun class. I mentioned it's an Unga Bunga class in the first half of the episode. It is like literally the class you like want. If you like, I just want to be strong and hit things. That's basically the class. Because he starts off hitting a little bit harder than everybody else does. He has a lot of access to strength gain and strength scaling throughout the run. And the Ironclad's a really fun character. So you pick the Ironclad, and then you talk to the big old whale, right? So the whale has a name. Give me 1 second. I completely forgot, because I'm dumb, because I just call it the whale. But that is essentially like the character who is giving you the quest to go up the spire, and essentially sends you on your way and greets you every time you die and reset. 1 second.
Through the power of editing.
Power of editing. I will either leave this in or completely
leave it in.
this. Yeah, maybe I can just turn the microphone down and aim it at my keyboard for a little bit of keyboard ASMR for those weirdos in our audience.
Hey, leave it alone.
Hey, I enjoy it too. Why do you think I've built so many keyboards at this point? Neo, I believe it's Neow, Neow, Neow. There's a big whale-like creature, 3 big old pair of yellow eyes, and you start the run. You talk to Neo, and Neo gives you 4. What do they call those exactly? I guess 4 options. Let's just call it that. I guess like 4 rewards. I guess essentially it's like you almost get like a modifier or something at the beginning of your run to have you start off with.
I think that's the word, modifier.
I guess modifier, yeah. And usually something along the lines of upgrade a card, remove a card. You know, you trade some health for a better card in your deck early on. You lose all your gold to gain a rare card, or you swap your character relic. And I mentioned before, each character has a different relic. The Ironclad has like a flame relic, essentially. So after every fight, he regains 6 health after every fight, which is nice because it makes it a little bit easier for you to start off the game, especially when you don't know what you're really doing. The game kind of just throws you in, and you basically use a little bit of like a buffer every time you actually start your next fight. And did you see one that you regularly chose over the others, or did you think let me pick this one because this one seems like it has the less impact on me as a new player?
Right. I sort of always pick the first or the second option because they seem like the least. They took the least from you, and so that's sort of where I went. I didn't pick any of the more extreme options, especially early on, because I didn't have much to go with. So I didn't want to start at a big disadvantage. But as I got better at the game, I was able to do some things where you sacrifice health, right, for positive items, and I felt that. I felt that power where you give up 20 health and you get a relic or something like that. I did feel that, and I was able to succeed when doing that. But at first, I didn't do anything of the sort. I kept as much health as possible because, again, going into it with the knowledge that I had of other games, I knew that health was going to be at a premium, and I didn't know how I got health back in this game, other than the campsites and all that. And so I wanted to keep my health for as long as possible. But after a while, it became clear that, especially in the early game, you want as much stuff as possible so that you can hit the end game with as many relics or as many things that can possibly help you. So that's sort of where I went.
Yeah, like I remember when I started the game, I was relatively, I can almost say over careful, like over cautious in the beginning. And then the more I played, I realized, oh, health is just a resource. Of course, to an extent, because you don't want to be, 15 health left over, and then, you'll see, hey, remove a card for 6 health. I'm like,
right.
Maybe I'll just deal with an extra bloat card in my deck instead of losing another 6 health, bringing me down to, like basically breathing on me and I die. So, but, you realize the more and more comfortable you get into the game, health becomes a resource, and you can use it and fluctuate with it and manipulate it in ways that can be beneficial for you later on. Just early on, I get that, like, I don't know what I'm getting into. Let me just play it safe. One that I always enjoy seeing from Neo, is the first 3 enemies have 1 HP.
I did pick that quite often.
Yeah. Fun fact. Apparently, I think I heard it on another streamer, YouTuber that I watch who plays a lot of Slay the Spire as like one of their main content games. That people who win the game, I believe, is increased by that first relic. The win percentage goes up by like 26%.
Oh.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, because it makes the first 3 easier, you have a little more flexibility in your run.
Right.
You can like kind of try to get it like a 1 health elite essentially to get like a relic early on. It's like a really nice idea, basically.
Yeah, I did do that in one run. I did plan it out so that I got one of the, I guess they're called elites, but like the bad guy space with the whole. Yeah. I did try to do that, and I ended up doing it, and I'm happy to see that was the right way to do it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you can kind of roll the dice on it, because usually elites show up around floor 5 or 6 or so, because you'll usually have like a fight, a campfire, a question mark event, a shop, and then an elite around something along those lines, basically, or like another fight and then an elite. So you kind of have to risk that question mark. Hopefully it's not a fight, so you don't burn one of your encounters before you even get to the elite, when you have at least 2 fights for sure before getting to that elite. So we're talking about the paths right now, so I guess we'll go into the map. It took me a little while to realize I can look at the map before I actually start doing anything. Like, oh really? Yeah. So like there's the 4 options, and I'm like, I'm just gonna take one of the options, and then I see the map, right?
Right.
And didn't realize the button for the map is literally in your top right off the bat. You can click on that before you pick anything. I don't know if you figured that out.
I didn't know that was a thing. I knew that I could press up or down and look at the map.
Yeah,
before selecting an option.
So yeah, I didn't realize that at all. So I was it was weird. So I'm like thinking, man, I wonder how everyone goes into this game so blind all the time, and then like they make it work so well, And then I watched a streamer, and I'm like, oh, I'm dumb. You can look at the map before you even start anything, before even picking a reward from Neo.
Brilliant.
You can look.
See, I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can.
That's a good idea.
So if you can figure out which path you want to go to, there's usually 3 or 4 starting points on the map, and basically you climb upwards. We're ascending a tower, like this, a spire. And then it shows you the level 1 boss you're going to be facing, or the Act 1 boss, I guess, specifically.
Right.
The first spot on the map on the bottom of all floor routes is always a fight. It's going to be a fight. And then after that, it'll start varying, and paths will move, like will either fork or come together, and and kind of order to run up a single line. I tend to pick a route that has a couple options in it. Like if I see if I see a safer route with like a bunch of campfires and I see a bunch of elites, I'm like, maybe I can take a little bit of a riskier run. I can go up, maybe fight a couple of elites. I can rest between, fight another elite. I can go for like a reward run, basically, and hopefully I have enough cards, power, scaling my deck to really get through these early fights. So look at the map. You want to figure out, what fights are happening, how many elites you have, Is there a burning elite? I don't think you got to the point of the burning elite yet.
I don't think so.
No, I believe that comes after an ascension, and I'll explain that later as well. The shops, which are pretty useful. The blue merchant guy, chilling on the blanket. Every time I see the merchant, I'm like, okay, safe space. I can hang out here. He is my friend. He's the only other person in this spire who is actively trying to help me. I always appreciate when I see the big blue guy.
It's like seeing Death in Hades.
Yeah, exactly. And I always like the little music, the music change that happens when you go into the merchant. It's kind of like not as ominous sounding. So at the merchant, you can buy cards, you can buy relics to modify your run. So, buy the single-use potions and remove card. You can remove one card every time you go to a shop. And then there's campfires, which you can rest at or smith at. I don't know. We'll talk about if you got into the smithing aspect a little bit.
I did.
You did. Okay, so you understand what smithing does, and I guess the biggest thing of smithing is understanding the value of cards. We'll go into that a little bit as well. And then the question marks. I think that's all the things you'll see on the map, aside from the act boss. And the question marks are like chance events essentially, and those are decided by like a percentage. I never looked into percentages. I've heard streamers and YouTubers talk about, because I haven't hit one yet, this has a 20% chance of being a fight, and then they'll calculate the risk of that in how they're playing their run to decide I need another fight, or it's too risky for me to get for this to be a rough fight. I'll take the confirmed fight on the left route instead. So it's, it's kind of a cool thing. Once you get into the game, you can kind of really see behind the code, try to figure out what you want to do.
Right. I think that's important with all these roguelikes is you sort of figure out how you like to play this game, which is something that Slay the Spire has a difficult relationship with, I'll say. But I think it does give you a lot of chances to play this game the way you're most comfortable, with some exceptions.
Is that going to be one of your nitpicks later?
It's one of two, yep.
Okay, cool. I'll let you take the floor when we get to that point. And then, let's see. So after the question marks... Oh, yeah, and then the boss, right? So there's a boss fight at the end of every act. Did you like a particular boss when you fought? How many, depending on how many runs you did, is there a particular boss you, were hoping to see? Because, you think it's a little bit easier, or you're like, oh, how do I actually fight this guy? Realize what kind of deck do I have to have there?
They're all terrible. The best part is that you heal to full after your encounter.
Yep.
I will say the one that I had the most trouble with, especially in Act 1, and honestly, the Act 1 bosses gave me the most trouble versus the Act 2 bosses.
Okay.
That headless knight that summons the two minions that steal a card apiece from you, that was probably the worst Act 1 boss.
The Bronze Automaton?
I believe so.
Bronze Automaton. I want to make sure of that, because I'm pretty sure this is talking about. That's actually the Act 2 boss.
I'm talking about the Guardian.
Oh, the one that goes into a ball, you mean? Oh, you're talking... that's an elite.
Wait. I am talking about the Bronze Automaton, so
okay, that's an Act 2 boss. Okay, so Act 1 is the Guardian, the guy who goes into a little spiky ball.
That guy was a pain until I figured out that I was able to just skip turns without hitting him.
Yeah, the little curl up mechanic with
it passes. Yeah, for Act 1, the Hexaghost was the one that gave me the most trouble because of the large damage attack that he has
every 6 turns or every 4 or 5 turns, I think it is, or so. So it's the Hexaghost, the Guardian, and the Slime boss. Those are the 3 Act 1 bosses.
Mm-hmm.
What I find really cool about Slay the Spire is that even though you're obviously trying to build your deck, you want to build a deck around a particular playstyle, the bosses and the bosses in each floor or each act require you to at least have some cards to help you deal with them. So your deck has to be built a particular way, essentially.
Correct.
Or at least have a couple cards to deal with them. So for the Slime boss, you have 3 turns essentially before he hits you. It's a big boy slam. Hits you for 36, I think. Again, I'm on Ascension, so I don't remember the original numbers that he hits you for.
Right.
But the way the Slime boss works is he has 140 health, I believe, or something like that. Or yeah, I forget the exact number now. I'm blanking right now. but he essentially has a large pool of health. You have to do enough damage within those 3 turns to drop him to half. And when he drops to half health, he'll split into 2 smaller slimes. And then each of those slimes will start alternating their turns as well. And you can split those into 2 smaller slimes on top of that. And then once you're there, that's it. That's the smallest they get. But essentially, you want to like hit and like prep damage before that 3rd turn. And when you're at that 3rd turn, before you drop them under half, you want to hit them with vulnerables, ways to deal with the slime cards he gives you, and then like chunk him as hard as possible. So when he splits, the next 2 that come out afterwards are as small as possible, so they're easy to split as well. For the Hexaghost, you have to deal a little bit with the burns he gives you, and essentially with the Hexaghost, the way I see it is like it's more of like it's like a race. Like I have to try to kill him before he floods my deck with all the burns that'll kill me.
Right.
And just be aware of when do the turns come up where he does that big multi-hit attack early on. And then for the Guardian, there's a little curl up counter underneath him, right? You see how much damage you have to do until he goes into that ball form.
Correct.
And that's how you avoid those big attacks, essentially. But every time he comes out of that ball form, he deals more damage. Essentially, he's like a strength buff every time he comes back out. Every time you next phase him. And the way I tried to see how to play those 2 boss fights in particular, those 2 boss fights want a couple of defense cards in your deck. I mentioned before, your deck has the 5 strikes, 5 defense, and then a couple of other cards to modify that are like specifically for your character. For the Ironclad is a bash, and then what's the other one? I feel like I'm forgetting another one. But yeah, the bash is the one that gives you vulnerable, so it allows you to do extra damage. That's like a prep card, right? You're like, okay, I hit him with the bash. Now I know my next attack is going to hit way harder, or the next turn, if I have to block, will hit harder as well. So essentially, you have to kind of be on the fly, like realize, okay, again, look at your map. Anyone who's listening to this, when you're playing this game, look at your map, plan your attack, figure out what you need in your deck. If I just need maybe 2 extra defend cards in my deck before I get to a particular boss, it'll make that fight so much easier. How far did you get in your runs?
So the furthest I got, generally, I was able to at least get into Act 3.
Okay.
There were times where I died in the middle of Act 2 or to the Act 2 boss.
Mm-hmm.
But the furthest I got was about halfway through Act 3, and I died to an elite. Like, basically the Tangela monster both times.
Oh, yeah, that's fun to deal with.
But that's basically what ended both of the deep runs that I had.
Yeah, that leads a weird one to deal with, because you can't ever use all of your attacks, essentially, because every time you hit it, it changes its intention.
Correct.
And you want to avoid curse card that it gives you when it'll signify when it's the curse card coming out, and when you see it, you have to hit it, and hopefully if you make a change, it doesn't hit you for something harder. So you always have to have a decent amount of like defense and one attack always in your pocket, just in case he wants to curse you that turn.
Mm-hmm.
So every monster or elite monster has a way to beat it and a method to fight it. You just have to figure out when you're fighting those through trial and error. You'll figure out the patterns basically on how to fight those guys, and that's one of the things that's like nice about the game that I really enjoy. Is like, okay, it's kind of, it has a little bit of that old school video game mentality, like Mario or Sonic, like especially when we were kids, right? It was like, you play it, you die, you learn, you try again. You have to remember what happened that last time, and hopefully it doesn't happen again, or if it does, you remember how to actually deal with it. Did you get all the characters?
I got everyone but the Watcher.
Yeah, the Watcher you unlock after beating the base difficulty with everybody once. Then you unlock the Watcher. So, again, you have the game. Now you have the game, and, you seem to enjoy it. If you keep playing it, you'll unlock, once you get a win with everybody, you'll get the Watcher. And the Watcher's a bit of a complicated class at first, but once you really get to realize how the Watcher works, it's really fun, because it feels so good to hit things with the Watcher. And when you were building your decks, when building a deck in Slay the Spire, a lot of people tend to fall back into comfort picks when they build a deck. Kind of when you play rogue, like you mentioned Hades, right? We talked about this. I think we talked about this off episode before. But in Hades, I love playing the shield because it's kind of the easier class to play with. You don't have combos with it. You kind of just swing the shield. But when you're charging it, you have that, the shield mechanic kicks in, right? You can block stuff from the front. That's like my comfort pick. In Slay the Spire, there's like a comfort character, but the decks and the way that the deck and the seed plays out is never going to be exactly the same. You have to be a little bit flexible. You can't always try to force how you build your deck. Like, there are times when you start building like a strength deck for the Ironclad. You want to scale, you want to hit harder, you want to unga bunga your way through, but then sometimes you don't find demon form, or you don't find a inflame or a spot weakness to give yourself the extra damage to build that strength deck, or the relics for that matter, like a brimstone or shuriken, where you play 3 attacks, you gain 1 strength. Sometimes you don't find those. You need to be able to be flexible and pivot your deck if you need, to keep the run alive. You really can't. This is one of those games you really can't brute force as much as you would like to, compared to other roguelike games.
Absolutely. What I found is that I wanted as many 0-cost cards as possible. And so that revolved around a lot of anger cards and a lot of headbutt. So sort of that engine where you were able to pop anger, get it into the discard pile, then use headbutt to pull it back out, play some other sort of card to draw the anger that I just put into the discard pile, and play it again. So I was running 6 or 7, 8 copies of anger by the end of combat, and that was sort of the way that I was playing this deck. And that was where I found my most success, was being able to get that engine churning and playing, 4 copies of anger, let's say, per turn. That would basically take out an enemy, and they hadn't even set up yet.
Yeah, anger is a fun card, especially early on. Like floor 1, I will usually take an anger, unless the other 2 options are so much better. But anger is a 0-cost card, and when you hit, it does, I believe, 6 damage, 8 damage upgraded, and once you play it, it'll place a copy of that card in your discard pile along with the one you just played.
Correct.
So it's a good card, especially early on, because Act 1, I consider Act 1, every fight in Act 1 is a damage race. You just want to kill the enemy faster than they can kill you. And then anger gets a little bit heavy in Act 2, Act 3, where we mentioned before you don't want your deck getting too big because it makes it harder to pull for the cards you really need later on. Early on, yeah, I can have 6, 7 angers in my deck because all I need are attacks. I just need to keep smacking things to move forward. In Act 2, Act 3, if I have 5 angers in my deck because I've used it twice and have 2 extra copies now. Like say I had 3 angers and I used it twice, I have 5 now. And I now have to worry about, hopefully, it's cool to have a 0 attack card, but sometimes I can't attack that turn because I'm entangled, so I can't play any attack, or I need to just drop all defense, and every time I attack something, I'll hurt myself or the enemy gains strength. So it's a nice card early on. Later on, it's nice to have 1 still in the deck as like a kind of like a free attack card, but I get a little bit wary of playing it multiple times later in the game. So when I was building my decks, I had to learn, especially early on, learning how to pivot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
I mentioned before, right? Sometimes I want to start building a strength deck. I find an early Inflame. Inflame, you play it for 1 cost, you gain 2 extra strength. That's a power, so that dissolves into you, not into the discard, it doesn't get discarded, doesn't exhaust. It essentially, your character absorbs the power card, so you don't have to play it anymore, which is nice. And the thing is, say I'm building an early strength deck, but then I find that 1 card and that's it. I get really bad RNG. I don't find any more of them. I have to figure out, okay, how else can I play this character? And what's nice about Slay the Spire is that every character can be played a couple different ways. You can kind of flex, a strength deck into an exhaust deck or something, and then hope maybe you find a Fiend Fire, which exhausts your entire hand to do a crap ton of damage. Buff yourself once or twice, and then okay, well, these are all garbage cards now. I just want to hit this guy, get this fight over with, move along. It's a nice way to like flex like a strength deck into an exhaust deck if you really need to.
I enjoy Fiendfire. I thought that was a really cool card, especially when you're fighting slimes and your entire hand is Fiendfire and a bunch of slime cards.
Yeah, it's like, oh, cool, free targets for me to get rid of.
Right.
I'm gonna hit you hard now, because now I don't have to worry about losing something that I actually really need.
And that was another mechanic, the exhaust mechanic, basically banishment, where you're banishing cards and removing them from play. It got to the point where I had a lot of cards that triggered on exhaust, and so that was a build that I was running just out of necessity after a while, and that actually turned out to be pretty okay. But I don't think it was the intended way to play the class, but it was some, and you talk about pivoting, you make the best out of a bad situation. That was an instance where I made the best of the cards that I was given.
Well, that's the cool thing, right? Because the Ironclad actually has like a build focused on exhausting. The Ironclad has a card called Corruption, and then Dark Embrace, and then Feel No Pain. Those are the three cards that a lot of people like look at when they're like building an exhaust, specifically for the Ironclad, an exhaust deck. And then you can also get something like a Juggernaut to round that out to like a Barricade. So let me explain what I just mentioned, because if you're listening, you've never played the game, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Corruption is a 3-cost, 2-cost when upgraded power. So when you play it, all skills, so defense, usually the stuff that defends you or debuffs the enemy, stuff like that, will exhaust. But it costs 0. So it's nice that, essentially like half your deck can become free, leaving you with more of your attacks at your disposal. And you don't have to use all your skills in one shot. You can save them. You can just use the ones you need right then and there. And then there's the other cards, Feel No Pain. So whenever a card is exhausted, you gain 4 when upgraded. Block. Say I play a block for 6 defend, or 5. Say I play a defend for 5 block, I get an extra 3 because it exhausts itself, triggering the Feel No Pain power. And then the other card, Juggernaut, whenever you gain block, you deal 5 damage. So now your defense cards are also dealing damage. And then the last thing I mentioned was Barricade, where you no longer lose block at the end of your turn. So there is a way for the Ironclad specifically to build a deck around losing your cards for a buttload of defense. And then you just swing with this giant wall in front of you, hoping that you can kill the enemy before you lose all of your defense.
Right, and there are cards. I think it was Barricade, the one that you talked about, which I really liked, where you keep your block, and that was another strategy that I realized sort of midway through a run, where it was basically Barricade and a bunch of garbage that I had, but if I opened with Barricade, I was in a good spot, because then I could just stack even the generic defend cards and play them based on the way that my enemy was attacking, and have a nice little pool of defense to play through some of the harder content.
That's actually one of the builds that is really popular. It's a Barricade deck. It's actually one of the highest percentage ones as well for the Ironclad, like the highest percentage of winning. It's like a Barricade exhaust build with like a Body Slam, and so Body Slam is 1 cost, 0 cost when upgraded, card that does damage according to how much block you have. So you can have 300 block. Now your Barricade, which is 1 cost or 0, can hit for 300 damage, which is great. And did you get around to the other characters as well?
I did. I managed to play a 1 run with the Silent, realized very quickly that this class was not for me in all actuality, and moved on very quickly.
Okay.
I did enjoy the Defect. I thought the Defect was a lot of fun. Basically the stance dancing, where you have the multiple orbs.
Yeah, the orb management stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a lot of fun. It was really unique. I also appreciated being able to attack with the orbs and not triggering block mechanics, so to speak. So like the Guardians thorn damage ability. If you attacked him with the lightning orbs, you didn't get hit back.
Yeah, because you're not technically attacking him.
Right, I'm not hitting him. I'm shooting him with magic.
And same with the Gremlin Knob monster, where you know the big red guy with the horns.
Yes.
So every time you play a skill, he gains 1 strength. So you can have a frost orb on you to gain a little bit of block at the end of your turn without triggering him to hit you harder, which is kind of a cool thing.
I also appreciated the plasma orbs and the energy, and I felt like I was never running out of energy with a defect.
Yeah.
Which made it a little difficult to go back to the Ironclad, where you're basically running at 3 the entire time you're playing with it. But
unless you have a relic, basically.
Right, but that's what makes the classes fun, right? And that's what makes them unique, is that
they all play
my play style for Ironclad is different, where I'm going back to my 0-cost moves versus the defect where I'm running with like 5 or 6 energy basically the whole time.
Yeah. The way I see it is the Ironclad is, again, relatively a simpler class with less overall mechanics to worry about, but because it's relatively constrained in comparison to the silent and the defect in terms of like making energy, aside from like 3 cards, I believe it's Seeing Red, which gives you 2 mana, Bloodletting, which gives you 2 mana, or 3, 2 mana, 3 upgraded at the cost of 3 health, or Offering, which gives you 2 mana and draws cards, but it exhausts. So that's the only real ways you can really gain mana with the Ironclad. With the defect and the silent, there are a lot more cards that give you options for giving yourself back energy, so you can play more stuff. Like, that are also repeatable. The Ironclad's one is 2 of them are exhausted once you use them, so it's like hopefully you can get what you need right then and there to, speed the fight along in your favor. The silent has, it has a lot of cheaper cards and a lot of, generation cards, right? The shivs I mentioned before. Like, it's fun, right? When you get to like, okay, I play 1 card, now I have 4 shivs to hit you with, which is cool. But you realize, oh, they don't hit as hard though. So I have to figure out a way to defend, even though I can hit you a bunch smaller, or find a way to scale myself, which is a little bit harder to do on the silent, because the silent just straight up doesn't hit as hard compared to the Ironclad.
Right, and that was something that I really appreciated, was realizing right off the bat, hey, this isn't for me. And not having to worry about putting so much time into it, because I could just play a different class. And the other 2 classes I really enjoyed. Yeah.
It was funny because for the longest time I was an Ironclad. Like, I preferred the Ironclad. And then I got my first win, like a true kill the heart win, with the defect out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny because I was not having a good time on the defect when I first started the game. Like, I didn't like the idea of running my deck around powers. And then I realized, oh, these are really strong. Okay. And then it's funny because I killed the heart, the Act 4 boss, and I didn't realize that I was gonna survive. Funnily enough, like, I thought I had a bunch of frost orbs giving me shield, and I was kind of just like already like in focus mode, just thinking how do I get shield to survive this next attack. And then I didn't realize I'd whittled it down to like 30 health, and I was like, oh, I won, this is it,
I'm gonna finish it,
this is amazing. And I was so excited about it. And then I was thinking to myself, I was like, wait, how do I get a win with the defect, the guy I don't like?
Right,
but I'll take the win.
I had a similar experience because I played through with silent, and I was like, man, all right, it really seems like the Ironclad is my character. I unlocked the defect. I'm like, all right, let me try it out. And then I go on a run with the defect further, just about as far as I went with the Ironclad my first go around. And I was like, wow, okay, this guy's actually pretty fun. And then I played a few more with the defect and ended up getting pretty far. I was happy to see that this was the other class that I was going to play, not the silent. That was a surprise, and that was pretty cool.
Again, because the game is a roguelike, it's a one-player game, if you don't like a class, you don't have to play them. You really don't.
Right.
You can just play the one class you like. There's like some people who are like kind of snobby about the game and really in the community, Like, oh no, a mastery of all the classes. Like, I don't care. I'm not in the community. I just want to play what I like. That being said, I do like all the characters. It's just that certain days I just cannot wrap my head around trying to build a deck for the defect one day, and then I realize, oh, I can't unga bunga my way today for some reason. I guess I'll play the silent. And then I realize, or it also could be RNG. I just get a bunch of the good relics that I need, the good cards that I need, and I just luckily build a really good deck with the silent for some reason. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna keep running the silent today and just see how many wins I can get before I'm done.
Yeah, I've been in that boat, especially with the other, obviously Hades is my only comp, but you get hot with your one class or your one weapon type, and you keep wanting to try it again and again and again, and then you try again the next day and it's just not working out, so you try something else, and then it works out. And that's one of the fun parts about roguelikes, I think, in general, is the ability to easily switch it up and find success versus other games, especially things like fighting games or card games or any other sort of competitive game where you put so much time into these things, it's hard to switch up easily and find that level of success versus a game like a roguelike where you're able to quickly and easily switch it up and find success right after.
The way I play the Slay the Spire, it's kind of funny because sometimes I'll be sitting in Discord and I'll just be streaming it. Like some friends will watch, but like, oh, like, what are you playing right now? I'm like, oh, I'm playing the Ironclad, and I'm just kind of on autopilot, which is kind of funny because I lose a lot of runs. I'm gonna say this right now for the listeners, I am not that good at this game because I don't think, which is funny because it's a card game. You should be thinking, but
Probably.
For some reason, I like to just brain off and play. And, again, like, sometimes it works. Sometimes it does. Like, like, my brain's obviously not completely off. I'm, like, thinking, okay, I need to hit for this, defend for this, I'm good to go. But then I'll just misplay a turn order. You know what I mean? Like, oh, wait, I needed this first to buff myself, and then hit for the extra damage to kill this thing. So I'm not taking 30 damage in the face. I would only be taking 17 damage in the face.
I've been there.
And it's, so when it's weird because I feel like for Act 1, I kind of just turn my brain off because I said before that Act 1 is kind of a damage race. You just want to kill things before they kill you. Act 2, Act 3, you start worrying more about enemy mechanics and turns. But Act 1, for the most part, I'm relatively brain off. Act 2, I start thinking a little bit more. Act 3, I'm thinking, oh, I have a decent run going. I should probably start focusing. And it's always like a realization moment. Like, I should probably start focusing before I just throw away the last half hour of my game. That being said, if I lose a run, I just go again. Like sometimes I'll get a run 5-10 minutes in, I'll screw something up. Again, my fault. But I'll just start again. No skin off my nose. I can start another run right off the bat.
Got it. Yeah, I think there are a lot of really good points to this game. And like I said, obviously, I think I could see, especially right from the get-go, why people liked this game so much. But I do want to talk about the two things that drove me up the wall that aren't really that bad, but because I played the game first that did it better, I think it stood out to me a little bit more. So the one thing that I noticed really early, and as I started to play the Ironclad more and more, I felt like Hades did a better job of the whole permanent stat boost system. I didn't feel that the permanent boosts that you get from the whale were up to par with the way that Hades has the mirror, where you're able to put your upgrades in the way that you want them to be. So at least every run sort of feels like it's
better. The next run feels better.
Right, and it also feels more tailored to you. Because the 4 options are either randomized or they do change as you unlock more levels on the character.
Yeah.
It always kind of felt like right from the start, things were different for me.
Okay.
And I didn't really appreciate that. The game already is RNG heavy with the cards that you get. At least let me have something that's constant, right? In my playstyle. The other thing, right, is that very same RNG where it was difficult to, and again, this is just because I went into this blind, number one, and because I played Hades first, number two. But the cards dropping and me finding the playstyle that I really liked, I found that it was difficult. Like, if I didn't get an anger in the first world, I was toast. At least for the way that I wanted to play things.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't have a headbutt in the early game, I found like my playstyle was affected heavily. And granted, that's me being a new player in a game that I'm unfamiliar with without all the top builds. But in Hades, I always kind of felt like, well, and again, that's also because there's only a handful of power-ups in the Hades runs. There's only a finite number of gods versus this game where there are, how many cards per class? I mean, you're looking at probably, 30, 40
there's a straight up
cards per class.
deck for every class. Yeah, exactly. Your only shared cards between classes is your strikes and your defense. Every other card from that point on is different from character to character.
Right, and there's 30 to 40 different ones versus the 9 to 10 gods in Hades.
Yeah, which are more or less ability modifiers.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think those were the two things that really drove me up the wall about this game. But they're not really even, like, bad.
No, they're more...
It's not bad at all.
Again, it's a feature of the game. That's the point of a deck-building roguelike game. It's meant to feel different, and you have to kind of learn how to run alongside it, then try to brute force your way through the game every time you play it.
Correct. Yeah, so again, a lot of it is just me, again, being new to the game and being so used to one roguelike that it was challenging at first to adapt to the second roguelike.
Mm-hmm.
But I still do think that Hades did some of these things a little bit better. But these two games exist, no pun intended, higher in the pantheon than any other roguelike with sort of these artificial difficulty modifiers. Mm-hmm. Because the games just aren't as good. The games just stink. And it's like, well, it's a feature. No, the game sucks.
I mean, I have a couple games that I would like to argue on that one, but we can get into it on
right, but they might also very well be well-made, challenging games versus, they're not well-made, they're not well thought,
and they just punish you by being hard, basically.
Right, they just punish you for being poorly made, but it's a feature. This is a feature, okay. Stupid.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, if you're just gonna say all roguelikes do that, I was like, Spelunky to me is almost a perfect game.
No, not all roguelikes do it. Some do.
Yeah,
it's something that's...
I absolutely understand that, yeah.
But it's something that I've noticed has gone away over the last few years with these games.
Because I think because there are more roguelikes coming out, the genre itself is becoming more refined.
Right, you're figuring it out more.
Oh, this isn't good to throw in this game. It's just hard for the sake of being hard, and then claim, or like, it throws BS at you to make it difficult.
Correct.
It's like, oh no, that's how the game runs. It's like, no, that's not a good mechanic.
Right, hard for the sake of being hard, or, artificial difficulty because the game is poorly made and broken and your character sucks and they don't give you any items and all that.
Yeah.
That's sort of where I was with roguelikes.
I get you.
But now, and this game in particular doesn't really do that. It is just a little frustrating when I can't seem to get the card that I want. And I don't really have the knowledge of the cards in the game yet.
Yeah.
To know how to pivot. But that will go away over time.
So I think that kind of leads into like my nitpicks about the game, if you want to really call it a nitpick. It's that, again, like sometimes you just don't have the chance to pivot a deck because of the RNG, right? That's true. Absolutely true. That being said, what's nice about it is that you can usually stall out for a card. You know what I mean? Like if you need a card, you can go for events that give you cards, like go for question mark events. I just need a card. I'm going to take every fight that I see. You know what I mean? I can go that way if I really need to find a card. It gives me more chances to see it. As you said before, because you're still relatively new at the game, it's not knowing exactly which cards are quote-unquote good or bad. because not there is like a tier, I guess, system, or like a tier list of good versus bad cards, but I don't even see it as like a tier list of being good or bad. I think it's how easy it is to implement into a deck. There are certain cards that are much easier to pick into your deck, throw it in there, and immediately useful. And then other cards where, like, you know, like a card like Clash or finishing move, or
I love Clash, by the way. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I love Clash. I
Really?
thought that was so much fun.
I hate that card. I'm the exact
Zero
opposite.
cost. Zero cost.
Yeah, but the issue with it is that every card in your hand has to be an attack.
Well, good thing I like to punch it in the
That's the
face,
thing.
and
But-
half my deck is anger cards.
But yeah, because you flooded your deck. But you know, again, I mentioned before, your deck has to be able to flash out to deal with Act 2, Act 3, which are more skill cards. So like Clash is good early on if you can manage it, but Act 2, Act 3, for me, I would almost never take a Clash unless I'm trying to prove a point that I can actually use it, which I have done. I was like, okay, I can figure this out. And then you have like cards like Fiendfire, Second Wind, Exhaust all things that are not, or like, yeah, Second Wind, exhaust all cards that are not attacks, basically, for block, which makes Clash work. But it feels weird that like I have to hold onto this, essentially a curse card, because I'm never going to use it, and then hopefully all the stars align for me to use it. You know what I mean? Personally, it's not my play style. It requires too much work to make it work. But that's the thing. Again, some people like the way it plays. Some people like to use only attack cards and not worry about defense cards for the most part. So it really comes down to how to utilize every card in your deck. As I said before, there's not exactly a good or bad card. It's just how easy or difficult it is to implement into a winning deck.
And the deck that you're getting the cards for in your run.
Yeah, and another thing too, you don't have to take every card you win, every card you find too. That's another thing too.
Correct.
So say, because as I said before, I don't want to flush my deck. I tried to shoot for like 20 cards by the end of Act 2, because I would have removed a couple cards as well. At Campfire, or not Campfire, at the Merchant, or at the, like, you know, the little shrine events, like the question mark. It's like, oh, you see a little shrine on the side of the road. You know, you can pray to like remove a card, or, you know, or a bonfire. It was like, oh, sacrifice a card, get another card later on, or get out, you know, it'll give you like a random buff. So if you throw away a strike or a defend into that fire, it'll just remove it. There's no benefit for you at all. It just removes it for you. But if you throw something like a rarer card, like an uncommon card or a rare card, if you throw like an uncommon, it'll heal you to full. If you throw like a rare card, it'll give you another rare card. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, I try not to have too big of a deck. And again, as I said before, like, this is because I've dumped a lot more time into this game than you have. You start realizing, okay, this is the point where I have to stop taking cards. Because I have 30, you know, like second act it, halfway through second act, I have 35 cards. I can't pull what I really need, you know, and then like Act 2 boss is gonna smack me because, you know, my third draw phase, the monster's hitting me for 37 and I have no block cards, so I'm just gonna take 37s in a phase, like, you know, like, so there's a way to start, you know, once you play more and more, you realize, okay, now I know how I like to play. Let me start refining the deck as I play instead of just taking everything that I can. You know what I mean? And that's the thing with this game, I think, early on, is that, like, because there's not a lot of like instruction essentially in the game, a lot of it comes down to experience, basically. You kind of you get thrown into the deep end. You don't know what the good or bad cards are, how to utilize bad cards for synergies, and you have to like do research outside of the game. If you are not like, if you can't start thinking like outside of the box essentially on your own, you have to start doing research, which is again kind of like one of my nitpicks for like this game. Again, that being said, you know, when I find a game that I do enjoy, I do tend to look for content around that game. So it's not like exactly a nitpick, but if you're trying to go into something blind and just trying to like dive in without like, you know, any real influence, it's hard to really get into this game until like you drop like 50, at least 40 hours into it.
Right. And I think that's also the fun with card games too, right? Is building your own deck.
Yeah.
And trial and error and all of that. I think that's a lot of the point of a card game.
And there's also like that moment when I realize when I build a deck and then I realize, oh, it doesn't work. And then I feel frustrated, right? It's the same kind of thing. Like, you know, like I build a deck and I think, oh, I'm so proud of what I've done. And then I realize when I play against somebody else, it doesn't actually work. So it's almost that same level of frustration I feel. And then it's like, okay, well, I guess I should look into what do I need to make this deck work, right? Either through criticism or advice from someone who I've played against, or a friend of mine who like understands the game more to give me advice. And I think that like for this game, the other roguelikes or other roguelikes basically indicate synergies a little bit more naturally without directly explaining it. Like the exhaust mechanic was like, okay, why do I want exhaust cards? You know what I mean? Like what's good about removing a card from my deck? I want cards, right? And then I realized, oh, okay, because I don't need this card later after I've used it once. Or like if I use it, I don't want it anymore because it's already done its thing. But I didn't realize it until I played a bunch, or I listened to like a YouTube video explaining why exhaust is a good thing.
Yeah.
And understandably, exhaust is a mechanic for stronger cards, right? Like, you know, a card that's strong becomes overpowered if you can play it 5 times versus if you play it once for a specific use case. And again, that just comes with experience and playing the game a lot.
Or you just get Based God Bludgeon.
Yeah, exactly.
Which never goes away and just kill the thing.
Well, funny thing enough, I actually prefer the other one, Carnage, the 2-cost one, because Carnage is ethereal. Say I have a bludgeon, right? Act 1, it's fine, it's great. I can just basically hit it once, it's basically done. Act 3, where bosses have 700 health, 32 damage doesn't mean a whole lot anymore. You know what I mean? And I can play more cards to deal more than 32 damage. So it becomes like a curse later on, it becomes a little bit heavy. The nice thing about ethereal is that 2 for 24 damage, it's great early on, but if it becomes really heavy and I can play more cards to do that same amount of damage, I can just let it exhaust. And it's out of my deck now. You know what I mean? Bludgeon becomes almost like a curse in the later parts of the game because it costs 3 to deal a small amount of damage in comparison to me playing 5 cards at that point to deal more damage. Again, it's one of those things you realize the more and more you play the game.
But big dammy.
But beat stick.
but 42.
But 42, exactly. And you mentioned something before about the nitpick, the card mechanic or the permanent buff mechanic in this game versus Hades. So Hades is a roguelite, and Slay the Spire, I guess, is closer to a roguelike, because roguelite is, I believe, defined by having a permanent outside of the game buff every time you play, right? So the mirror does have a tangible effect on every run you do afterwards, because you have more health, more money, you pick up more souls, you have an extra revive, you know, all this other stuff, right? You deal 10% more damage striking the enemy from the back, or if they're full health or whatever, you know what I mean? Versus this game, where the only permanent quote-unquote buff, I guess, for this game is that you unlock a couple more cards, and that's really it. And that's not really like a buff per se, because again, if you don't know how to use the cards, it's actually more damaging for you in the early run of this game.
Got it.
So, and again, that's the whole argument of like a roguelite versus roguelike, I guess. You know what I mean? This is more a traditional roguelike than it is a roguelite like Hades. But yeah, so you know, I guess you know, wrapping up a little bit here. Did you enjoy the game?
Hell yes.
More than you more than you think you would have, or
no? Because I came into this knowing from you and other like multiple sources have told me, hey, you need to play this. This game is a lot of fun. It just I just never had the time, I guess, or the opportunity to present itself and play it. But this is like, please don't get it, like, please don't misunderstand.
Mm-hmm.
I had 2 like knocks on it.
Out of
one of them is going to go away as I continue to play this game,
mm-hmm.
because I'm going to know the cards that I want, and I'm going to know how to use them effectively. So yeah, no, this game is awesome, and I think about it a lot, because even when I'm not playing it, I'm thinking about it. I really want to play it. I'm going to clear this because I do find myself enjoying this game, and I'm going to clear it. I'm going to try to do my best to do not just a regular clear, but like an ascended clear, sort of like the way that I've sort of gravitated to Hades, where I'm doing the heats, right? I'm doing the post game heats, the post game content, and you know, this is definitely going to be something that I put a substantial amount of time into because it's fun, and you know, I'll say it again. There's a reason this game got its flowers, and if I had played this game first prior to Hades, I would have been singing its praises even more than I already am.
It's awesome to hear that because, funnily enough, I believe like 3 days after we started the first half of our recording, another one of our friends got into this game because it was free on PlayStation Plus, and he was addicted to it for a little while too. So it's like good because because again, for the most part, like a lot of people assume this is a PC game. No, it's available on all consoles. It's on PlayStation, on Xbox. I believe it's free on Game Pass. So if you have Game Pass, go get it. It's a great game.
You can even play a mobile port.
Yeah, there's also a mobile port for like $5, I believe. Pretty good. I've heard a couple people saying that like it's a little bit buggy, but for the most part, I believe it's like 80% of people who said the mobile port's actually pretty good. And then on Switch as well. And then for me in particular, I have it on PC, and I'm excited for the Steam Deck because I want to be able to take this game on the go, and I want to take my progress with me. Versus like if I buy it again for the Switch or buy it from the mobile port, where my stats won't transfer. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where I just like having all my stuff collected in one place. And I'm excited to play this game on the Steam Deck. And from my understanding, is that they are currently testing on the Steam Deck to make sure that this works properly, either with the touchscreen or with the controller, like it does on consoles. So I'm pretty excited for that. So yeah, I'm glad that you enjoyed this game. I'm glad that one of our other friends randomly just got into this game alongside you. So you guys could have been talking about it for all I know. I don't even know how much you guys chatted about the game. I know we've talked about it a little bit in our group chat, and yeah, it's awesome. I'm glad that somebody else is down the rabbit hole with me.
Yeah, for sure. I'll be here. Don't worry about that.
I'm excited that I'm excited. I'm happy that you guys have joined me on really appreciating like what I consider one of my like most recent favorite games in the last couple of years.
Yeah, so what I'm going to recommend to you is also going to be a game that I discovered and I love, and I think you're going to love it too.
What are we talking about here?
Well, we're going to tease the audience here, Lakan, but we are going to cook with our friends next week.
Cook with our friends?
That's it. Just end it.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Just end it at that point. End it. Cold ending.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for spending your time with us. I hope you guys tune back in next time to hear us talk about stuff that we enjoy next time.
See you next week.
I've just been looking for people to talk to about like more video game focused stuff. I've been
First, it sounded like you were just going to say, I've just been looking for people to talk to, and I was like, oh,
a little bit.
Here.
I'm a little bit lonely.
I'm here for you.